Hello and welcome to Medic's Desk. Today's topic of discussion is cyclophosphamide. So we'll just study about the cyclophosphamide in various headings like the mechanism of action, pharmacokinetics, special precautions, and the various side effects and their management. So what exactly this cyclophosphamide is? It's an alkylating agent, and what does it do is it basically gets activated and binds. It cross-links the DNA and RNA and inhibits the protein synthesis. And what happens due to this is, since the mechanism of action is not related to any specific part of a cell cycle, it is called as a cell cycle non-specific drug. So where it is metabolized is an important question. So most of it is metabolized in liver by the microenzymes and most commonly by CYP450 and CYP2B6. It's a very important thing to remember because in liver dysfunction we cannot use this drug as a full dose. Metabolites of cyclophosphamide are 4-hydroxycyclophosphamide, aldophosphamide, phosphomide mustard, and acrolein. This acrolein is very important because it causes a lot of side effects, and we are going to go and see this into the management and the side effects. And it is mainly excreted into urine. So it's important that the liver and the kidney functions both are important, as it is metabolized in liver and excreted via kidneys. So what are the special precautions we have to take? Since this drug, it causes infertility, the gonadal suppression could be irreversible, that has to be kept in mind. So whenever we are giving cyclophosphamide to people of young age, it is to be kept in mind that it can cause fertility and it could also be irreversible. And in patients with heart disease, it has to be used with caution. So what are the other special precautions? In pregnancy, it will become a category D drug, and also it has to be stopped if it is given in a woman who is breastfeeding. So coming to other very important side effects. So cardiotoxicity is one of the important side effects of cyclophosphamide, and it mainly occurs in high dose. So what exactly high dose of cyclophosphamide is 60 mg per kg daily, or 120 mg to 270 mg per kg given for few days. If there is some pre-existing comorbidities, like if the ejection fraction of the patient is less than 50%, then there is like increased side effect. There is an increased side effect of cardiomyopathy in these patients. And how does it cause cardiac toxicity is by direct endothelial injury. That is a very important thing to remember. What can it cause? It can cause toxicities just like transient ECG changes, some asymptomatic elevation in the cardiac enzymes. It can also lead to fatal myocarditis, which can lead to death. There can be heart failures, arrhythmias, and severe cardiomyopathy to be kept in mind. And what are the clinical signs that we see in the patients of cardiotoxicity? Are dyspnea, tachypnea, some fluid retention, and shock. So just to remember, it can cause cardiotoxicity. The mechanism is by direct endothelial injury, and it can cause various changes that I have already told. It can cause hemorrhagic cystitis. This is one of the very important side effects and is encountered in many patients. So it occurs generally in up to 40% of the patient, but majority are children, has to be kept in mind. And the other factors that cause hemorrhagic cystitis, I will ask them to focus here, is what is the rate of infusion, what is the rate of metabolism of drug, how is the hydration status of the patient, how is the urine output, and what is the frequency of urination. This is again very important thing to remember, because more the rate of infusion, more the rate of metabolism, more the hydration status, less the hydration status, decreased urine output, and if there is reduced frequency of urination, there will be more chances that the patient will develop hemorrhagic cystitis. The mechanism here is again direct renal injury, and this is caused by acrolein. We have seen what acrolein is. It's an active metabolite of cyclophosphamide. So it directly goes and injures the uroepithelium. Once there is hemorrhagic cystitis, patient can develop severe constriction of bladder, he can develop anemia, there can be recurrent UTIs, in severe condition there can be bladder perforation and renal failure, which can ultimately lead to death. And the long-term side effects to be remembered are bladder fibrosis and transitional cell bladder tumors. Just to revise it once again, hemorrhagic cystitis, very important side effect to be remembered, commonly occurring in children, almost in 40% of the patient, and all the factors that causes decreased urine output increases chances of hemorrhagic cystitis. So, what are the prophylactic measures that we take to prevent hemorrhagic cystitis? So, we have seen that all the things that causes decreased urine output increases the chances of hemorrhagic cystitis. So, we'll take all the prophylactic measures to increase the urine output and hydration of the patient. So, most important thing is hydration. Patient has to be encouraged to take a lot of oral fluids as well as IV hydration is given, and he needs to void frequently, and the drug should not be administered during night times, because in the night time patient may sleep and he may not go for urination so many number of times. Mesna is one of the very important drug because it directly binds acrolein and prevents urothelium injury. So it is very helpful. Generally, whenever we give cyclophosphamide, we will give 400 mg per meter square of Mesna during the administration of cyclophosphamide. Then after 4 hours, and again it is repeated after 4 hours. There can also be use of continuous bladder irrigation, but we generally don't use it. We can give the patient diuretics if the urine output is less than 100 ml per meter square. And Mesna and hyperhydration are equally effective. So what exactly hyperhydration is? Hyperhydration is a fluid of 3 liters per meter square in 24 hours. So when we calculate BSA, accordingly we give the hyperhydration per hour, and this is very important. And the intake and output of the patient has to be continuously monitored every hour. So what is the treatment of hemorrhagic cystitis? The most important treatment is first to discontinue the drug. Second is to increase, to give the patient, if he is not on hyperhydration, to give him hyperhydration, and also to encourage him to take oral fluids. The platelet count of the patient has to be kept above 50,000 so that the risk of bleeding will reduce. So we'll divide early cystitis and late cystitis. So in early cystitis, what all things we do? First thing is hyperhydration, and the fluid has to continue till 48 hours until the patient passes normal color urine. Means the time since when the urine color has become normal, up to 48 hours we have to continue hyperhydration. Second thing that we don't use very regularly is bladder irrigation with alum. It is generally used as 1% solution that is provided by pharmacy, and for intravesical administration. It should be given at a rate of 300 ml to 1000 ml per hour, and there should be a maintenance of pink color drainage continuously. Since alum contains aluminium, it has to be kept in mind that the aluminium levels in the body has to be measured, and especially in the patients who are having renal dysfunction, aluminium should be continuously monitored because it can cause toxicity. Third is prostaglandins. So we know what prostaglandins does. Prostaglandins go as a particular site and they will cause vasoconstriction. So they will also cause aggregation of platelets. It is given at a, kindly zoom here, it is given at a rate of 0.8 to 1 mg per deciliter in 50 ml NS, and it's instilled into bladder. How we give it? We instill it into the bladder and then we clamp the bladder for 60 minutes, and then we repeat it every 6 hourly until the symptoms have resolved. But we should also know what are the side effects of prostaglandins. These are very important. They can cause severe, intense bladder spasms. So if it causes intense bladder spasm, we will have to use oxybutynin or belladonna or systemic analgesics. So just to revise, first to discontinue the drug, maintain hydration, platelet count to be maintained above 50,000. In early cystitis, hyperhydration. If required, then bladder irrigation with alum, and use of prostaglandins cautiously. Right? Hemorrhagic cystitis, we always have to keep in mind that is there any secondary infection that is causing hemorrhagic cystitis. So for that we need to send cultures from the urine. We also need to send the investigation for CMV and adenovirus, and if they come out to be positive, they need to be treated accordingly. The most important again here, even in late onset hemorrhagic cystitis, the treatment will be remaining as hyperhydration. So coming to, just to revise the things, the most important side effects to remember are cardiotoxicity and hemorrhagic cystitis. And now coming to other side effects. So as we all know, it's a very potent myelosuppressive drug. It causes bone marrow suppression, and there will be a nadir of WBC which is around 8 to 15 days, and platelet nadir starts around 10 to 15 days, and the recovery will be in 17 to 28 days. There can be alopecia, it can be reversible in 40 to 60% of the patients, and it's a hematogenic drug with a low to, like, it's a moderate hematogenic drug. Like more the dose, more than 1 gram, it's a moderate hematogenic, and less than 1 gram is low moderate hematogenic drug. It can cause diarrhea and mucositis in around more than 10% of the patient. It causes SIADH, and also an important side effect again to remember is pulmonary fibrosis. It can also lead to the secondary malignancies when used in various chemotherapy protocols, and it can also lead to radiation recall syndrome. So just to revise, bone marrow suppression, alopecia in 40 to 60% of the patient, it can be reversible. It's a hematogenic drug. It can cause diarrhea and mucositis in more than 10% of the patients. SIADH leading to electrolyte imbalances. Important side effect, pulmonary fibrosis, secondary malignancies, and radiation recall syndrome. Now we come and see what are the important drug interactions along with cyclophosphamide. We use allopurinol commonly to prevent tumor lysis syndrome. It can increase the effect of cyclophosphamide and cause increased myelosuppression. Amiodarone is commonly used in antiarrhythmias. It's an antiarrhythmic drug. It can lead to increase in risk of pulmonary fibrosis. If a patient is consuming grapefruit juice along with this drug, it can cause delayed activation of cyclophosphamide to be kept in mind. And endomethacin, it's a NSAID, which is a very important drug to remember. It can cause life-threatening water intoxication and pulmonary edema. So, just to revise in crisps, it's an alkylating agent of a nitrogen mustard type, cross-links the DNA, and it's a cell cycle non-specific drug. Metabolized in liver, excreted in kidneys, to be cautiously used in young people because it can cause irreversible gonadal suppression. Important side effects are cardiotoxicity, hemorrhagic cystitis. Very important to remember. To remember for hemorrhagic cystitis, two things we should always remember is acrolein. It causes direct injury to urothelium, and for treatment we use hyperhydration as in Mesna, and other side effects that I have told. Okay, thank you, and see you in the next lecture.